Standard Time. Tonight we can start about 8 p.m. British Standard Time. And I had a good week. I had a great plant week. I got an opportunity to do a lot with a lot of different plants. Yesterday, I head up north and made up to Nottingham, and I got to go into a couple plant stores up there, and those videos will be dropping on the channel as soon as I get those edited. And you know, those garden plant stores, if you've ever been inside of them, some of the really nice tropical ones are wonderfully designed. They're very aesthetic, they're very beautiful, and the one I went into yesterday was no exception. But what I want to talk about now is Alliums. Now, I love Alliums, and I don't have one with me, but Alliums are in the same family with onions. They're in the same family with this monster plant here. This is the amaryllis. And so, you know, if you know about amaryllis, you get them as a bulb in the fall, you plant them, you get all this beautiful growth, foliage growth here. This is what comes out of your amaryllis and your aluminiums. And so this aluminium here is doing really well. There's a tiny one here growing up out the side. This is a side shoot, so this needs to be repotted. But we're not doing that right now. We're talking alliums. I'm just saying they're in the same family. But let's set this aside. And let's talk about some of these. Now, if you know what they look like, here's a perfect example. This, I think this is Purple Sensation. I picked this one up because typically you can only buy alliums in the fall. That's this Purple Sensation. It's a really nice allium, nice purple globe. So if you've ever seen all those globes, some of the larger globes, this one here is, I believe this is Globe Master Gladiator. Nope, this is Purple Rain, one of the larger globes. So some of the largest ones are Globe Master and Gladiator. And look at that. You can just kind of see how large that bulb is going to be. I have a video where I went into a lot of detail coming up about alliums, and I haven't gotten these out into the garden yet. This one is starting to dry out a little bit. You can see just here on this top, you see that's a little dry. And so I definitely, when I'm touching it, this is definitely how do you check for moisture. Touch that, put your finger about, you know, half inch in. And if it still feels dry, which this does, and this is planted in core, then you know that you need to get water on that plant as soon as possible. Typically, you buy your alliums in the fall. And you plant them in the fall at the same time that you're planting your tulips and some of your other spring blooming plants. That's when you plant them. However, you can buy alliums in the spring just like this. And if it looks like an onion, again, it's in the same family with the onion. Onion shoots look like this as well. This is going to put up one long, beautiful stalk, and it's going to bloom in late spring, early summer. And it's a wonderful time to bloom. It blooms, you know, you have your daffodils, your crocus are first, so to speak. They can be spread out, but you have, in general, your crocus, and then you have your daffodils, and then your tulips, and there are other plants in there, and I know. And after those tulips, you'll get your alliums blooming, and they come up, beautiful tall stalks, and they look one stalk per plant, and it's gonna have a globe. Some of them have a flat top, but most of them are globes, and you buy them for that statement to add height to the border, height to the garden, and they look really good planted in groups. Here, just like in this picture, you see that's planted in groups. Yo, how's everyone doing? How's everyone doing? Hope everyone had a wonderful, wonderful day, wonderful afternoon. But I was saying, the rule of thumb, because the live drops, that happens sometimes. The rule of thumb with plants is buy them in threes. And because when you plant your plants in good if you plant them in groups of threes. And then plants can sometimes die on you, and when your plants die, I keep going in and out. I hope this live is not glitching too much. I really want to keep going because I'm excited about alliums. I'm excited and I really want to keep going. The Humble Guy HD, you're new. I'm pretty new as well. I appreciate you jumping on the live. But yeah, if you plant them in threes, because one could die, that can happen sometimes, and you still have two plants left. You have to consider the size of the plant and the spacing of how close you have to plant them. But plants do tend to look good together in color grouping. So if you see a plant that you like, buy a couple of them, plant them kind of close. But think about a triangle, like one in the front, one on the side, one on the side. Think about a triangle with the proper thing, and that'll look good because it'll grow up and it'll look full. So if you wanted to put a plant in a pot, let's say you wanted to put these alliums in the pot. Now these are smaller, not going to get as large. You could put, say, 6 to 9 of these in a reasonably sized pot. much larger than this. So basically 3 times the size of width of this. And they would look really great because they have 9 stalks coming out of it. So it'll look really great in the pot. If you plant them in your border in the garden, also think of grouping them together. It'll just look really good. It'll make a statement in your border and in your pots if you group them together. What you don't want to do is say, typically, oh, I like this plant, buy one of it. I like this plant, buy one of it. I like this plant, and then we plant them all together. And it'll look like a wildflower field or something along that line. If you buy one and put one in and put one in and put one in, and think about it, if you buy different heights and sizes and varieties of plants that bloom at different times, then your border or your pot may not have that cohesive look that you're looking for. A couple things to consider: plant in groupings, whether it's in a pot or if it's in the border in the ground. Plant in groupings and be considerate of when the plants are going to bloom. So if you're planting the same type of plant, understand that if you plant all of one plant of the same species in a grouping, they all may bloom at the same time. So you want to get a plant that has an extended blooming period across the summer, or stagger the plants where you have a group of this kind that'll bloom now, a group of another kind that'll bloom a little later, and a group of another type that will bloom a little later. And if you space it out across your border like that, you'll have blooms that will cover a large section of the summer. So when you think about alliums and you think about when they are blooming, they're blooming after your tulips. So what you would have done if you want to have a nice border is plant your crocus, which will come up first, early spring. Then your daffodils will be coming up. So you plant some daffodils, you buy those bulbs, and you can have some hyacinths and other things mixed in there. Your tulips are likely going to bloom towards the end of your daffodils, and then coming out of your tulips, you're getting foliage from your summer and spring, late spring, early summer plants. They're starting to put out a lot of foliage. Some of them may even be starting to bloom. And then up out of that foliage will rise the tall stalk of your allium, and it adds height to the border. Now this one is not going to get very tall. And let me see if it doesn't have it written here, but this one, I could tell you by the size of it, it's just not going to get very tall. It's a nice size allium, 3 in this pot, so the bulbs are not that large. But this one is Gladiator, which is one of the largest. This can get up to a meter in height, or a little more than a meter, which is a little more than 3 feet tall. So there's going to be a tall stalk standing up, really beautiful. And it's going to have a tall, beautiful globe at the top of it. The globes are going to look, again, very similar to this. This is a large grouping of this particular allium. I think this one is Gladiator, which is going to be really tall and impressive. If you buy them in the spring, as I have bought these, and they're pretty pricey, like that's £5. So you think about that, like $6 or whatever, if you're in USD, that's £5. Only one bulb. However, if you buy them in the fall, you can get them in a pack of 3 to 5 for roughly the same amount of money, or a little bit more, but definitely you do better buy them in the fall as a bulb, planting them. But if you didn't get the opportunity to buy them in the fall, you can pick them up in the garden center in the spring. That's what I did here. And these are going to go into the ground. I already have other alliums, and I'm going to plant these in a similar area. So in the midsummer, in my border, I'll have these beautiful tall alliums coming up. How do you plant them? Well, the key thing about planting plants is look at the height and depth of the pot. So if you're going to plant this outside in the ground, or if you're going to take this out of this pot and put it into a more beautiful pot, because you wouldn't necessarily maybe sit this outside. If you have a nice terracotta, or even if you're just going to scale up into something like this, right? You have a plastic terracotta, and if you wanted to scale up, this would be a good size pot. Like you have this and you want to scale up like that, that's fine. This pot is large enough because of how tall that stalk is going to be. You don't want to put it in too small of a pot because you don't want to risk the stalk causing the plant to fall over. So it has to be in a large pot where you can plant deep enough. The key thing though is planting at the depth of the pot or just a little bit below the depth of the pot. So if this pot here is, see that height on this pot. This is the size hole that you roughly want to dig. Of course, a little wider, go about 2 inches wider, maybe about 1 inch more than this depth. Take this out, plop it in the hole, put some fertilizer in that hole, a little bit of mycorrhiza fungi, that'll go well as well, to help those roots really adjust to that new environment, uptake for moisture, uptake for nutrients. That you could add that mycorrhizal, that'll help with that really well. But you don't want to plant this too deep. The key thing is, it says plants should be planted 6 to 8 inches. Well, if you go about 8 inches with this, that'll be about half, about up to here. If you plant this plant that deep in the ground and there's a little one that's growing up here, it may die. It may not survive. So think about the depth of the pot. And that's something to really consider when you're pulling a plant out of a pot and putting it into either a border. Now, if you have mulch, I would go the depth of the pot, a little deeper, right? A little wider. Put that into the ground. I would not necessarily take the soil off because this is soil that is grown in. And this is a nice, good, you can see it's a nice soil here. I would use that at this depth. And then you could mulch it up to, about right here. You could go up a little bit, about 1 inch, maybe 2 inches of mulch. You still don't want to go too far up this plant, but you could add a little bit of mulch to kind of get that depth and then to ensure that that plant is still, at a depth where it will survive. Okay, so these are the alliums. I have a longer video that I filmed. It's kind of a how-to, move this to the side. It's more of a how-to video where I go and describe, okay, if you want to grow alliums from scratch. And that's kind of something that I'm focusing in on the channel is, okay, where can I jump in and be the most useful and helpful to individual gardeners or people who are into gardening, getting into gardening? Well, if you're already an expert, you don't need my opinion, right? You already know you're an expert. You can go out and you can find most of the things that you need. Of course, I can maybe put you onto a couple things you don't know. But I figured, hey, let me focus in on new gardeners or people who may be new to gardening or want to know how to grow or plant a particular or specific plant. And I say, let me focus on that and let me kind of jump in that space and fill that space. And I think there's still room in that space to create a YouTube channel focused on helping new gardeners and beginning gardeners to be able to grow plants and be successful with plant growing. There are some keys that you have to keep in mind, regardless of what plant it is. But there are a lot of specifics that are also very much plant specific. The key thing is I always approach every plant from saying, even if it's a cultivar and it's been, in a greenhouse modified, in its native environment, what are the growing conditions for that plant? And if you can kind of get to know what the native environment conditions are, then your next goal is to say, okay, how closely can I replicate those environments of that plant? Or is this plant a plant that can handle a lot of changes in its environment? Bulbs tend to give you a bit of flexibility because they can handle some changes. They can handle some drought. They can handle a bit of moisture. So I love bulb plants. The other thing, a lot of bulbs are perennials. They come back year after year. So it's up to you what you want to look for in gardening. And I don't want to tell you how to do it, but I'm here to help and assist, just pass along a lot of the knowledge that I've gained over the years of growing plants. I've been growing plants for roughly 30 years or so, at least. And okay, live is back. I'm live. This one's going in and out. I don't know what the video is going to look like at the end, but it's going in and out. Hopefully I'm not too choppy, not too grainy. It looks good to me right now, but hopefully what you're seeing is looking good as well. Where was I at? Alliums are a great statement plant. You can't really build a lot of borders around them. They come up, they bloom. You can get different varieties that will bloom across a wide spectrum of time, across that early to mid-summer period. There may be a few that may go into late summer, but you wouldn't want to build your border solely around alliums. They come in mostly colors of white, purple, burgundies, some nice reds, a couple of pinks in there. So you can get some nice coloration, but it's a nice statement plant to add in. It kind of is a plant to say, hey, if you have that growing, you're showing that you have a little more depth of understanding. Just planting hermicallus with your daylilies, and I love hermicallus. I love daylilies. One of the favorite roses in the U.S. because it is so resistant to different environmental changes. If you water it, if you don't water it, knockout roses will be there. So, trying to bash anyone for what plants they decide to grow, but planting alliums will show that you have a little bit more of an understanding. All right, let's move on to some of the other plants here. Now, what I've been working on, and I'm going to just have to take these and set them to the side. One of the things that I've really been working on is some marigolds that I planted a couple weeks ago, actually a little more than a couple weeks ago. And here they are. They're doing pretty good. Now, what I did was they got a little leggy. You can see how tall this is. And that's typically not something that you want. I would love for these to be shorter. These nice red stems is indicating to me that when I first started growing these plants, they weren't getting enough light They're doing a bit better because what I did was I moved the grow light closer to the plant. And you can see the light sits about right here at about this height. I might drop it down. I might bring it even closer to the plant, because what I want to do is if you provide enough light, the plant will stop growing up and it'll start growing out. These are looking good now. They've straightened up. And what I was concerned about is whether or not these stems would thicken, because if I can bring the light down closer on top of these marigolds, like not too close to where to burn, because you can burn plants just like humans need sunscreen. If you put the plant in too much light, it can begin to burn that plant. So you want to watch out for that. Don't put your plant in too much light. But if I drop my grow light a little bit lower, maybe about right above a foot, these plants will start to spread out, and that's what I want them to do. I want them to spread out. If they get much larger than this, I may pull them out of these cells and plop them up into little individual pots. But they're doing pretty good. They're just leggy, and that's just a factor of the fact that I started them in late winter or early spring. It was more late winter. And I may have started them just a little too soon. Different varieties. This variety didn't come up well. You can see this row here did not come up well. This row did really good. I don't know can't remember which variety was on this row, but not a single one of those came up. But then across the rest, these came up and some on the end didn't come up. But this is a nice selection of marigolds. Marigolds are really wonderful plants. It's the first plant that I ever grew, so I've been growing them for many years. They're annuals. Every year you have to replant them from seed. They will self-seed if they're given the right conditions, so they can come back as volunteers that following year, so you can have more marigolds. But I tend to just plant them up from seed every year, which is not a tremendously hard thing to do. I have some more to plant. This was the first grouping that I got out, and they grow really well from seed. It's one of the plants that I have always known, if I plant it from seed, I will have success. I've never had a problem with being concerned about marigolds coming up from seed. Here's a nice little petunia, and I bought these a couple weeks ago, actually now I guess about a month ago, and they're doing good. You can see this is what the plant is going to look like once it blooms. And these little growing cells, it just isn't enough. You see how large that plant is compared to the cells? So what I want to do is have a couple pots here, and you would say, hey, just plant this outside. I can't. In my growing area right now, my last frost date is not until mid to late April. So I need to keep these plants for another month indoors. Well, let me get some soil and just repot this real quickly. Angle this down. There we go. And so I just want to repot this. I need to keep it in here growing in this. I love to use just a general all-purpose compost. I don't like to use the compost specific for a particular type of plant. So, there's compost that says for young plants. I don't tend to use that. I just use a all-purpose. There's a compost for mature plants. I don't tend to use that either. I just stay all-purpose because it keeps me from buying too many different types of compost and kind of complicating. I won't say that there's not value in potentially doing it like that, but for me, I find that I like to just buy general compost. Now here is some beneficial bacteria, if I can get this open. I picked this up about a year ago at Target. Oh, let me get this open. I'm trying to open it when, you pull too hard on things, it'll open and kind of go scattering all over the place. So I'm trying not to have that happen. There we go. Dust coming off of that. Mix that into the soil. What that does is the same thing, very similar to the mycorrhizal fungi I was talking about a bit earlier. It connects to the root hairs of the plant, grows along those root hairs, and assists the plant in pulling nutrients out of the soil. Now, what I will do, because this plant is now a little bit larger, when you first plant a plant, it has a lot of energy stored up in the seeds and can pull a lot of energy just out of your potting soil. But I want to add in a little bit of slow release fertilizer. This is a 6-month slow release fertilizer. I'm not going to put too much in here, just a little bit. And that's going to slowly release around that plant and really help it grow. I prefer slow release fertilizers because they tend to not burn the plants. You can actually burn plants with too much light. You can also burn them with too much fertilizer. When I was young, I used to burn a lot of plants like that. And you could tell it's burned because, and you use the term burn, because the leaves will start to curl up at the end in some cases, and they'll look like they've been burned. Just kind of move some of this soil to the side. There we go. And I would, like I said, with a brand new plant, I would not use fertilizer, but this plant is a little larger now and it's past that early stage of growth. But what it really needs is space. Let's get a bit more soil around this. Nice compost here. Let me just move that out of the way. And here's a nice petunia. Potted up. It will only be in this pot for about a month. And then after it's past my last frost date, because this is another annual, and you're like, oh, it's falling over. It's okay. These plants grow, they kind of trail out. They're low. They don't necessarily stand upright. They grow and they trail out. And you can see them a lot of times. They're used in hanging pots. So what would happen is you plant a lot of these in a larger pot. It's hanging. This will grow off and it's kind of trailed down like that. Those type of pots are really great. They look good, have a lot of statement in it. I don't tend to do hanging pots like that, but I will plant this potentially in a pot or in one of my flower beds. I have a strawberry bed and I'll plant this along the edge and this will grow over the side and it'll look really good. But it grows, produces a lot of blooms across the course of the summer. Let me show you one that's already having a bit of success. Look at that, already blooming here indoors. This is Petunia Lavender Blush. I think it's a nice little petunia. And I understand when I bought this, it looked very much, well, much smaller. These were all much smaller. These are all different types of petunia. It was like the little plant, it was like that big. You know, I potted this up on a video, on a live, again, about a month ago. But this already has a bloom, has another one that's coming out here, there's another one coming out there. So you can see the benefit of getting it out of that smaller grow pack. This is smaller grow pack, right? It's just growing it out. And get it into a larger pot, give that plant a bit more space. The roots need room to expand, and that's what this has had, room to expand, and you get this nice little bloom. This is a classic petunia, right? The purple color is very common. Now this petunia here is more of a double. You can see the bloom just has more petals to it, so it's going to have a different look. I bought a lot of different varieties because I want a broad spectrum of petunias, and I put that back in the pot with it so I'll know which one it is. If I don't keep this tag with it, I won't be able to know which one, because you can see they all, as far as the plant is concerned, they all look the same. So let's set this petunia here. It's a beautiful little flower. Now that this one is in a larger pot, it will likely expand as well, and it'll probably be blooming here in a few weeks. Let's get these other two into a pot. I do like petunias, but when you get opportunity, if you have a little bit of extra money and you can jump past starting at seed, and you can get some little, plants like that, go ahead and get them. They're in the garden centers early in the spring. Again, in the spring, there's a lot of plants available, and there's also a lot of seeds available. And you can grow from seeds. You can look here, the marigolds that I was just talking about a moment ago. I grew those from seed. And if you want the broadest selection of variety, then growing from seed is absolutely the way to go. And it's cheaper. It is so much cheaper to grow from seed. So here is another Petunia Thumbelina, growing straight up, really tall, beautiful plant. I don't want to take this, you see the seed, the roots there, nice, creamy color roots, that's what you're looking for. And just plop this in. And all right, let's get a little bit of the beneficial bacteria. Again, it works very similar to the fungi. It's just going to attach to those root hairs and help them take up nutrients out of the soil. And then I want to add a bit of fertilizer, just a little bit, not too much. Blend that in. This is a slow release fertilizer, so it's not going to release all of the nutrients out of that fertilizer, all at one time. And this is a nice one because I picked this up because, and I don't have my glasses on. And, getting older, I didn't need glasses until like a couple of years ago. But it has, of course, potassium, nitrogen, phosphorus. But it had a lot of trace elements in it as well, which made me really like this fertilizer because you're getting some copper, sulfur, boron, iron, magnesium, zinc. If that sounds like the same thing that you have in your multivitamins, well, it is pretty much similar, right? We're all living on this planet. We kind of have this very similar type conditions for growth. Plants need water. Humans, we need water. And so plants need sunlight. We do need sunlight to produce vitamin D. I'm not saying we're plants. I'm just saying we've all evolved on the same planet. So it's not surprising that we have similar needs for growth, survival, and thriving. Conditions that are too harsh for most plants are also conditions that are too harsh for most humans to survive in as well. Just get a little more soil around this. So these cubes are, because these were sitting in a tray of water. I keep about a ½ inch of water in the tray at all time. So they always have a little bit of moisture in it. This is dry. The cube is wet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this. I will mist it here in just a few minutes. And then I will sit it back in the tray. And then this one is easy. Repotting is easy. And that's another petunia. All right. And I have one more. Oh, let me take this again if I don't keep this. And this is a nice one. I like this one because it's what I like to call blousy. Look at all those petals. It's not like this one here, right? But that single petal. This one is going to have just a really beautiful kind of a creamy yellow multi-petaled bloom. And over the course of the season, they will bloom from early summer all the way to late summer. Petunias can bloom for that extended period. So you can get a lot of blooms from one plant. They're annuals. You just have to replant them every single year. Now, I like these little pots. I've talked about them before. This is a bamboo pot and it will last for roughly 4 to 5 years. So you can use it, and after 4 to 5 years, it'll start to break down, it'll start to crack, and it'll crumble, and it'll break up. And at that point, I can take it and compost it, and it doesn't become waste. The plastic pots, although they're very convenient, they're plastic, right? And so they don't break down, and if they do, they end up in the landfill or something along that line. But these others, bamboo is a little more environmentally friendly. Unfortunately, they do cost a bit more than the plastic counterparts. What I tend to do though, like I didn't buy this pot. I bought a plant, it was in this pot. I took the plant out of the pot and just saved this little pot. And sometimes you can go to the garden center and your garden center will give the pots away. Like these little pots like this, grow out pots. Go out to your garden center towards the end of the growing season. And a lot of garden centers will have those things stacked up by the front door. And you can take as many as you like. And I tend to do that as well. Just kind of mixing in this fertilizer. Doing a little differently on this one, mixing it in a little better. Okay. This is the same one as the other one. It's just that nice creamy yellow. It's a beautiful color there. But petunias look good in pots. Again, if it's a hanging pot, they look exceptionally well in pots with high-sided pots where the plant can grow and trail over the side of the pot. That's a condition that looks really good for petunias. You can plant them kind of, though, in borders along the edge of the border towards the front of the border, and because they can be seen. If you plant the petunias in the middle, they may not be seen if you have some larger plants that will grow in over the course of the year. So put them towards the front of the border and let them trail along the front of the border, and they will look really good in that condition. If you're growing a lot of low plants, which are not going to have a lot of height, you can plant them deeper into your border and they may look good, especially if you can see the border from above, so they may not get crowded out. They're trailing plants, but they're not vining, meaning they don't necessarily have the ability to attach to a stem and then wrap around it and grow up. So you won't have that, but they will trail and just kind of meander out across the border over the course of the entire season. Now, I want to show you something else as soon as I get this potted up as well. Okay, that's enough soil around this one. All right, and I'll show you a difference here. These have been under a grow light, which is roughly 3 feet above the plant. They look good. They don't look bad, right? You can see it's upright, growing up towards the light, doing pretty good. This plant is shorter and stockier because it's been growing under the same light as the marigolds here in the front, which is much closer to the plant. That's kind of what I wanted for the marigolds. You can see it's a shorter plant. When you have plants that's reaching for the light, they grow taller, trying to get to the light. Here, you can see shorter. Not only that, look at the difference in the color. Because this plant is, I'm going to move these closer to a light, not getting quite as much light. Look at that, lighter green, not as much chlorophyll, not producing as readily. Look at this plant. These plants were starting the greenhouse at the same time, but because these growing conditions are not quite as good as these, this one is already blooming, a deeper color on the leaves. Now, you could say the color in the leaf is variety, and that is true. It could be variety where you have a slightly darker color. I would think, though, that not just variety, the fact it's blooming, it has a lot more to do with the fact that it's getting a bit more light than the other plants. So what I'm going to do is, with these 3, I'm going to move them, because I have some other ones that are like this. I'm going to move them to where the others are, and hopefully they'll get a bit more light and they'll do a bit better. They're only going to be indoors for another month. Around April 20th, after 20th, 21st, I may give it another week. I may do it at the beginning of March, May, the beginning of May. I may move them outside at the beginning of May just to make sure I'm past that last frost date. And then I can get these outside into pots and into my borders. Okay, so the petunias here are doing good. Have this little tray. This is what I was talking about. I probably won't keep this tray. I don't tend to grow things in this small type cell, so I may not keep that one. I'll set it to the side for now. Let's move these petunias over, and I can show you some more petunias that I planted. Let's set these over here. There we go. So about 3 weeks ago, I'll close this fertilizer up, don't need that anymore. About 3 weeks ago, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I need to maybe chart this down, and I should chart it down. I planted this out, take the top off, and it was half petunias and half squash. Petunias up to here, squash on this side. And you can see really tiny, the petunias are starting to grow in. These were planted from seed. Now, one seed packet costs roughly the same price as one of these plants. So you could buy either one plant here, or you could buy the seeds, plant them out, and they've come up pretty well. I see 1, 2, 3, 4. This is just breaking through 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, that one. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 15 plants have come up. And I think I had 17, roughly 17 seed. And they're coming up. They're still really tiny, really young. I have to make sure that I take care of them. I want to get some more moisture in here. This growing tray, I can feel it. It's a little dry. On this end, these are some cucumbers. I planted one in each cell. Here I have 2 growing in the same cell. When you have 2 growing in the same cell, this one actually didn't do very well. What you tend to want to do is you only want 1 growing in a cell, but you don't want to pull it out. You're tempted to pull it out, but if you pull it out, you could disrupt the roots. So better thing to do instead of pulling it out is just snip that out. because it would not have grown well in that same space, in that same cell. It would have been crowding roots. Now these cucumbers, because of how large the plants get and how fast they grow, I can't leave them in these cells for too long. I have a couple pots, so I may just move some of them over right now. Again, just like with the flowering plants, it's too soon for me to take these cucumbers and put them outside. The frost would kill it, and so that would not be good. Just kind of massage that, and here's that plant. Looks really nice, right? A little dry, but I'm gonna definitely get these watered and get this out, get some soil in this pot here. And this is a nice green cucumber. It's gonna look good. Actually, you know what? Why do I keep saying these are cucumbers? These are not cucumbers. These are courgettes, which is a squash, actually. These are not cucumbers. These are squash. So because these are still so young, though, I don't want to add in. I'll add a little bit of the bacteria, which will help them grow, but I'm not going to add any fertilizer. You don't add fertilizer to new plants. It's just too risky for you to potentially kill that plant. So you don't add fertilizer. You really don't want to do that. Even a slow release, I just don't tend to do that with the new plants. And these, they don't have true leaves on them yet. Like these, there's one true leaf right there. But these are those sprouting leaves. So this plant is still really young. Normally I wouldn't even repot it yet, but I'm a bit concerned that the roots may stretch down through these little cells, grow out the bottom, and then get intertwined, and I may not be able to get them out without killing a few of them. So I don't want that to happen. Just kind of, there we go. So yeah, these are squash, a nice green squash. I bought the seeds. Squash, cucumbers, watermelons, pumpkins, they tend to grow really well from seed, and they're not very hard at all. So repotted that as well. Now let me get another one here. I'm gonna get a couple other pots and get them all potted up. The key thing is when you're taking this out of these cells, what I like to do is grab the cell and just kind of squeeze it on the bottom to loosen it up. It's just compacting that soil around that plant a little bit, and it loosens it up. And then from the base, slowly pull that out. You don't want to grab it and yank it out. You will kill that plant. They're very fragile at this stage. Okay. A key thing about growing cucumbers, squash, and pumpkins and other plants like that. I'm going to plant some pumpkins here in another week or two. I'm a little late getting some of my pumpkins started. Last year I tried to grow a giant pumpkin. I may try that again this year. But when I say giant pumpkin, I only want something about 300-400 pounds, maybe 500 pounds at the most. I'm not trying to go for the world record, which is actually 2,700 pounds. Incredibly large pumpkins. Don't want to do that. Okay, so I did go a little higher up around this plant here, and I don't think that's going to hurt it too much. Some plants you can kind of bury that stem a little bit. Some of them you don't want to do. So I left this one stem not buried as much. Here, this stem is buried a bit more, and I just watch them both to see if there's any negative effect of planting them that way. All right, I need a couple more pots because I have 3 more. Let me get just a second. Once I plant my alliums, I'll have the pots that the alliums are in, and I can use those as well. All right, I have 3 more in here. Let's get these out because they're just really large, and I really don't want to risk this plant overgrowing in this little cell. The petunias, they're so young. I'm not dare not going to touch those. Okay, now this one has a nice, you can see there's a true leaf. Again, those are the sprouting leaves, and there's a true leaf right there. And I'll just sit it right here, and I'll get some soil. A little too much, pour some of that in there. Add some of the bacteria to it. No fertilizer, even though it has one true leaf that's just not old enough to where I'm comfortable adding fertilizer. Add some of this soil back around here. And we now have that potted up. 2 more to go. And the thing is, I'm running out of small pots. So these last 2, I'm going to pot these last 2 together in this larger pot. Normally I wouldn't do that, but when these go outside, they're all going to be planted in the same bed. Try to give the plants a little more space, but I'm more concerned about getting them out of these cells right now. If I absolutely have to, I can repot these, but I don't think I'll have to. Not before I put them outside. There we go. I'll get that in there. And then here's the last one. And go to the other side of the pot, give it a little space in between them. Kind of go down in here, and there we go. And get a bit more soil on top of that. There we go. That looks really good. I have 2 here, a little bit of space in between them. But these will probably now be joined together for the duration of their life, because when I plant them outside in the flower beds, which I mix some of my perennial flowers and vegetables, I kind of grow them all together. I find that it's easier for me to manage them that way. All right, set that to the side. The petunias in this pot are doing really well. The other cucumbers didn't come up. I may take some of these out as far as the pots, break that soil up, and repot. I may pot some more cucumbers in here. I keep saying cucumbers. I may pot some more squash, or actually cucumbers, who knows. A bit of dust, excuse me, sorry. A bit of dust from dealing with the soil. It's dirt, it's kind of dry. These look pretty good. I'm happy with those. All I need to do now is make sure I get these watered. And then again, sit them back in that tray. I have them sit in the tray, and has about, 1/4 inch of water at the base at all times. Just keep them from drying out, and that seems to do well. Got all those repotted, and well, I would add a bit more moisture to here. And I would actually probably keep these petunias covered. Just keep that humidity higher. This is how they've been sitting in the window. And I will probably add water here, because these petunias are just so small. They have those tiny leaves on them, and I just don't want to risk them drying out or dying. They're just so fragile at this early stage. But I think that's pretty much it. I had a pretty good success growing here so far, right? From the plants that I purchased, really small, already have blooms here, to the seeds that I'm planting. Okay, what's next? Well, I won't talk about it in this live, but this is one of the things that's coming next, and this is one of my favorite plants of all time. This is a peony, and this is a beautiful peony, raspberry sundae. And peonies are absolutely magnificent. One of my favorite plants. I have multiple planted in pots. I had a whole peony bed in my last place that I had. I have peonies planted out in front here. I plant peonies at my mother's home. Peonies are an incredibly long-lived perennial, and they are a wonderful joy to have and grow because they're also used as a lot of wedding flowers, but you can grow them yourself. So I'll be doing a video on peonies here pretty soon where I'm going to go into a lot more detail about them. Also picked up a book. Bought this today. Got a bit of dirt on it. It's okay. That's what The Secret Life of an Arable Field. And it was on sale. And I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but there's a lot of talk about the fact that fields in general are not very biodiverse. So there's not a lot of different plant species and varieties that can grow in culture. But there are things that thrive in that type of environment. And there are going to be certain plants, mice, voles, rabbits, hawks, other things that can thrive. So I bought a book. I want to read about it, learn a bit more about that, because I think that's from a good standpoint. I think that's pretty good. So I want to wrap up this live. If you have any questions, drop a comment down and let me know if you have any questions, any thoughts. I will be covering petunias here pretty soon. I'll talk a bit more about those. Peonies, I'm going to talk a bit more. But the next thing that's really coming up next, I have some counters, is tomatoes. I'm going to go and do a deep dive on tomatoes. I'm going to plant some tomatoes here pretty soon. I have a couple that's already started, and I'm going to get a bit more planted because tomatoes is just such a fun plant to grow, produces a lot of fruit for you over the course of a growing season. But yeah, if you have any questions for me, drop down, send me a comment. Hey, if you like the comment, or you like what's going on here, leave a comment, and then also click that subscribe button, guys. I appreciate that. If you could subscribe to the channel, that would help me out a lot. I've managed to get up to about 1,400 subscribers, and I'm trying to add value to people talking about gardening. And if that is of value to you, then hit the subscribe button. I would appreciate that. I do lives here from the UK every Sunday, usually between 7:30 and 8 p.m. British Standard Time. I think we're in British Standard Time right now, but that's when I do my lives. I jump on here about every week, once a week. And if I have time during the week, I'll do another live, but that's what I'm committing myself to be out here every Sunday, doing a live, sharing the knowledge that I have, talking about the plants that I enjoy. This, over the next few weeks, is going to be a lot more talk about my summer plants as we head into the spring and summer. I have, of course, all of my house plants, which they're doing good, right? They're still going and growing. And I'm going to let them continue to grow. I have a philodendron that I need to get repotted. So with plants, is always growing something new, repotting something, moving something to a larger pot, and there's always something to do. They're if you have enough plants, it's very entertaining and it's very engrossing where you're very busy with it. You have one or two plants, then you're watching that plant really closely, but grow to your level of what you're able to watch, what you're able to care for. I have a bit more time here where I can spend a lot of time focusing in on these plants. I've been doing this for a long time. So if you get that opportunity to grow something really nice, hey, grow something. Petunias, you can get these already bloomed out. They look really great. Not hard to care for, just don't let it dry out. These things dry out for a week, two, it's gone. You have to start over or wait till next year. But yeah, I have so much knowledge and I love to share that with you guys. Until next time though, do take care, have a good week, and hopefully I'll see some of you again next week, next Sunday.